Now we will see some of the examples of edible vaccines. And the first example is transgenic potatoes that has been tested for diarrhea. And the first human trial were conducted in 1997 for these transgenic potatoes. And these transgenic potatoes had the subunits of E. coli, that is a heat labile toxin that is responsible for diarrhea. So this E. coli is quite prevalent, and this presence of diarrhea through this E. coli or these compounds is quite a serious thing. And if we can utilize potato as a food that acts as edible vaccine, and it also gives you immunity against this E. coli, this would be a very nice intervention, because especially in our environment, E. coli is quite very much prevalent, and it has shown that four-fold increase in the serum antibodies was manifested in the volunteers, 10 out of 11. So 10 volunteers had this response, which is a very positive response, and this four-time increase, in the serum antibodies, that shows that this can be a very effective strategy to develop immunity against E. coli based diarrhea through utilization of these transgenic potato varieties. Then it was later followed by another clinical trials that took place in Boyce Thompson Institute at Cornell University, USA. It happened in afterwards, where 20 volunteers they were given to eat these potatoes, and this was having this Norwalk virus. This Norwalk virus, the group of viruses, are also quite serious. They produce diarrhea and vomiting in patients when they consume that kind of product, having this novel group of viruses. But the result of these clinical trial was that out of 2019 people, they showed this immune response. So this again, this is quite high. So that shows this kind of intervention can be very successful if this that number of people, they develop the immune response against utilizing of such crops. But the limitation, especially in although these were quite successful experiments in both cases, but the problem with potato is that we normally don't consume potatoes as raw, in the raw form. They have to be cooked, and once we cook them, then these vaccines would not be very effective, and that is a limitation. Although we have successfully produced something, an edible vaccine, but because of the preferences, as well as the limitation that this has to be cooked before it is used, so that cooking temperature would be affecting the quality of vaccines or the response that is generated by utilizing these crops. So then people started thinking about other plant materials such as tomato, because tomato can be utilized without cooking as well. We consume this as salad as well. So this tomato was then used against these Norwalk viruses, and this Norwalk viruses was again introduced, and as an edible vaccine, these transgenic tomatoes were produced. They were clinical trials on mice, and the mice were fed with these transgenic tomatoes, and they showed this immunic response against this viral infection. So this again shows some progress in terms of developing some edible vaccine or edible tomato against this novel group of viruses. Other than these two examples of potato and tomato, there are other plant materials that has been rigorously tested and being proposed to be tested. One of the promising fruit is banana. This is exploited as a good source because banana can be consumed without cooking. We don't have to cook this, and it can be grown locally, almost in very different kind of environment as well. So this could be an ideal candidate if we can make banana as vector for edible vaccines that can be a successful intervention. And it has been shown that the protein expression in transgenic banana is tissue-specific promoter dependent. Similarly, there are several other examples such as rabies glycoprotein. They have been expressed in case of spinach. So spinach has been used against rabies. Hepatitis B surface antigen in lettuce and potatoes has also been tested. So if we talk about these future prospect or the kind of areas or this kind of disease that can be tackled through developing edible vaccines, so they are different. There are different areas in which there are possibilities, and there is some progress undergoing in science. And these generally involve cancer therapies, birth control, chloroplast transformation, then its role in autoimmune diseases, to make recombinant drugs and proteins. So these are different areas in which there is development taking place, and these are the potential areas in which this concept of edible vaccines can be exploited very well for the betterment of humankind.